Welcome to class. My name is Johnny Barlianta. In this session, we are going to discuss about relative clauses. This lesson is taken from English in Common 5B, Unit 9.3. By the end of this lesson, I hope you will be able to explain what is a relative clause, why we use relative clauses, and how we form relative clauses. What? Relative clause is a clause that is attached to an antecedent by a relative pronoun such as who, which, or that. The position of a relative clause is immediately after the noun or the antecedent that it modifies. In this sentence, Mr. Brown is the antecedent or the noun that is modified by the relative clause that comes after it. Who taught me at level 9? The subject of this sentence is therefore Mr. Brown who taught me at level 9. Then you need the verb is a nice person. So that is the position of a relative clause in a sentence. It follows immediately after the noun or the antecedent that it modifies. The relative clause gives more information about the antecedent or the noun that it modifies. Study the rest of the following examples. Why? A relative clause is used to modify the noun or the antecedent that precedes it by giving additional information. In the previous slide, we talked about who for a person, which for a thing, that for a person or a thing. We also have other relative pronouns such as when, where, and whose. So, what are they for? Study the following examples. How? Now, we are going to learn how we form relative clauses. In fact, when a sentence has a relative clause, it originally came from two sentences or two clauses that are combined into one sentence. So, in the new sentence, there are two clauses, the main clause and the relative clause. Let's take a look at these examples. The first one, I like teachers. They teach patiently. I like teachers who or that teach patiently. The second example, I want to buy the dress. It is displayed at the store. I want to buy the dress, which is displayed at the store. The third example, the house is too expensive. I want to buy the house. The house that or which I want to buy is too expensive. Here are more examples. I always want to return to the place. I was born there. I always want to return to the place where I was born. He wakes up in the morning. His alarm clock rings at this time. He wakes up in the morning when his alarm clock rings. He is looking at the girl. Her hair is long. He is looking at the girl whose hair is long. Now let's read an article together to see how the structure is used in a written passage. Please pay attention to the relative clauses in this article and learn how they are formed and how they function. The real Sherlock Holmes. Was Sherlock Holmes a real person? Not exactly, But Dr. Joseph Bell, the man who inspired the character of Sherlock Holmes, shared many qualities with the famous detective. Arthur Conan Doyle, the writer and creator of Holmes, met Dr. Bell in 1877 at the University of Edinburgh Medical School. Conan Doyle was studying to be a doctor, and Bell was one of his professors. Bell was 39 years old when Conan Doyle first attended one of his lectures. He is said to have walked with great energy. His nose and chin were angular, and his eyes twinkled with intelligent humor. Bell, who was a brilliant doctor, liked writing poetry, playing sports, and bird watching. By the end of Conan Doyle's second year, Bell had selected him to serve as his assistant. Being at work with Bell, where he had plenty of opportunity to observe, only increased Conan Doyle's admiration for the great doctor. Among other things, he was able to witness Dr. Bell's remarkable ability to quickly deduce a great deal about the patient. Dr. Bell observed the way a person moved. The walk of a sailor who had spent many years at sea varied greatly from that of a soldier. If he identified a person as a sailor, he would look for any tattoos that might assist him in knowing where the person's travels had taken him. He trained himself to listen for small differences in his patients' accents to help him identify where they were from. Bell studied the hands of his patients because calluses or other marks could help him determine their occupation. Conan Doyle published the first Holmes story in 1887. His innovation in creating a character that would appear over and over in a series of self-contained stories meant that Holmes's popularity grew with each installment. Soon the character was so beloved that people refused to believe he wasn't a real person. Letters addressed to Sherlock Holmes, consulting detective, arrived daily at Baker Street and Scotland Yard, each begging him to take on a real case. Read the information in the active grammar box. Decide which examples contain defining relative clauses and which contains non-defining relative clauses. After you learn about what, why, and how of relative clauses, now it is time for you to practice. Let's do some exercises. Combine these pairs of sentences to make one sentence. For example, the police still haven't found the man. He stole my bag. The police still haven't found the man who stole my bag. That's all for now. I hope you learned something useful. I will see you again in my next video.